Hello everyone, welcome. I know I said I'd be reviewing, this, but I'm not gonna because I don't really want to touch it. Can you blame me? So instead of that game, I'm gonna talk about Tomb Raider, or Rise of the Tomb Raider, I think is how you say it, specifically. This is also my first go of Tomb Raider before. I haven't played any of the ones before this, and I never had much of an interest in it. It just looked like kind of meh to me, to be honest. I do know someone who really likes the new Tomb Raider games, but they just never looked me up my alley, and I never cared much for them. But let's see if this game can change that, shall we? So the game begins with a screensaver effect over a voiceover. Meta. The person doing the voiceover seems to be doing an impression of a character from The Matrix, where they just sort of talk about philosophy and be around the point for like 30 minutes. We then cut to a mountain range where we meet Lara Croft and that one fat black guy from the early 2000s who was in a lot of kids' movies. That or the guy who played BA in the remake of the 18 that came out a few years ago. But getting back on topic, BA tells Lara Croft that the people they hired don't want to go any further because they don't want to go into the mountain range. And he says no amount of money is making moves. Lara doesn't seem to care that much because I guess she has a death wish and says the lost city's up there. Okay. BA says it's going to be one hell of a climb and she says she's not turning back. I guess she really does have a death wish after all. So they make it to the peak summit or whatever it's called, and they start walking up it. But BA's a little worried because snow shouldn't be coming off the mountain peaks like that. I wonder what's gonna happen. Have you seen a snow movie? So after walking for a bit and doing some jumping puzzles, they make it to a cave, and BA suggests they should stay here for a while. Lara continues on because she really wants to die, I guess, even though we find out later there's a blizzard coming on a mountain. I think it's wise to be a little want to live. We then find out the reason why she's risking her life is because to stop something called Trinity from finding the lost city first. Okay, I guess they're the villains of the setting. Place your bets now. Something actually complex, like maybe a bit more ambiguity, or straight up villains and they're not even pretending to be anything else. After that, BA tells us the storm's getting closer and we only got a few hours, which should be enough time to look around for a while and get back to the cave. And unless some video game logic happens and the storm magically gets here a lot sooner, or something else bad happens. And after yet more climbing puzzles, so after pulling herself up from a ledge, she finds the Lost City, which is very oddly named because it's like one building. I guess it looks nice, and there it looks ancient and beautiful and one of a kind, as long as you ignore the Capitol building. Also, I'm just realizing something now. They haven't said the name of this place yet. They kind of just refer to it as the Lost City. So for now on, I'm just going to refer to it as the Lost Capital, because fuck you. However, the celebration of finding the Lost Capital is short-lived because magically the storm does something. Apparently it's here now, and shakes her off the mountain. I guess the wind and stuff. After that, some rope shenanigans ensue for a minute, like pretty much every climbing movie ever made. And she survives getting whacked into the wall at very high speed. And she's not even injured or really in any real pain. Okay. She's dazed a bit, but that's about it. After having a little rope swinging, she finds a place that she can grab onto and pull herself up. So she's safe. Although I may have spoken too soon because the weather causes an avalanche because of reasons. Drama. Take a page out of Hollywood's books. If you want to make something more engaging, add more spectacle and violence and peril for the characters. Which, as we all know, is a surefire way to make a movie fantastic. Yeah. Worked so well for Star Wars. Good thing there's a convenient running section nearby so she can try and outrun the avalanche, although it doesn't really go that well. So after getting pushed around in an avalanche for a little while, and somehow surviving, we cut to 2 weeks earlier, where we see Lara is walking in the rain for no established reason wearing a hoodie. Maybe she'll sing. Sadly, before she can do that, she looks up and sees someone's in her apartment. I think it's hers. We then cut inside the apartment where we hear an audio recording. Unfortunately, when I played this, my phone rang and I kind of missed out what the hell he was saying. And I was kind of lost from here on in. But I got the general gist. Basically, it boils down to an evil secret organization that's trying to keep the world in control. And the MacGuffin thing in this game. So I'm going to refer to it as the Holy Grail from now on because, well, look here. So after that exposition dump, the door opens to reveal Lara Croft, and she's looking around and seeing who was inside of her apartment. So after looking around for a second, someone knocks at the door. Laura's a bit startled after thinking someone broke into her apartment, so she grabs a weapon and is ready to attack the guy who's opening the door, instead of just trying to lock it. Turns out, however, that it was actually someone we've never met before who Lara seems really friendly with. I guess she's someone from her past or friend. Maybe she was a character from the last game. I don't know. I won't go into detail about this conversation because it's kind of overlong and it basically boils down to my dad was right, your dad was wrong and mad. Come back to the manor with me. I can't do that. I saw something, whatever I can't explain. Yada yada yada. It's not that important. Let's go to Syria now. So after that riveting conversation, we have a shot of a scorpion. After that, we see a car drive past and inside of it is Lara Croft being driven by someone. I don't think we learn his name, so I'm just gonna call him Higgins. I would have called him Rimmer, but I'm gonna save that joke for later. Anyway though, Higgins tells her that we're driving into a war zone. Then let me ask you this, Higgins, why did you agree to it then? Laura reassures him and tells him we're close to the oasis. On their way to the oasis, the helicopter buzzes past them. She then says something isn't right and looks over at the driver. And she says, you told someone. He says they're paying more than you. God damn it, Higgins! Schmeg. But getting back on topic, the helicopter starts shooting at them and Higgins dies. No, Higgins! Higgins may be dead, but he will not be forgotten. Higgins, you will be remembered. Okay, let's forget about him. So after What's-His-Face gets shot and killed, the car flipped about 18 times. And Laura crawls out and is pretty okay for someone who just survived a massive car crash. I guess not wearing your seatbelt will save more lives. Remember that, kids. Take off your seatbelt when you have a car accident. It will save your life. Good thing she got as quick up as she did, because turns out the car is leaking gas and is gonna explode. Okay. So after trying to run away from the explosion, she accidentally falls down a cliff and lands somewhere where she conveniently finds ruins. To try and get more information about the ruins, she uses her father's research, which is all very conveniently on a tape deck. Okay. So after that, she discovers this is the place she's looking for and climbs inside. Doesn't really seem that wise, to be honest. So after looking inside the ancient ruin for a second, she's discovered it's a marker. No, not that one. Oh, I wish it was. This one only has a bunch of writing on it that she can't read, and except for one word which says profit. Maybe the rest of her instructions on how to make markers. Okay, I'll stop it with the Dead Space references. Getting back on topic, she discovers that her dad was actually right. I thought that was already confirmed by the mere existence of this place, but I guess she is fully sinking in. Then again, she could be a bit woozy from the car accident and the cliff fall. I guess that would make anyone not 100% there. So after walking around for a while, we overhear some enemies talking. And they're talking about generic Ask Villain dialogue that you've heard in every error game ever made. Seriously, you can replace a villain's name with something else, and you probably wouldn't notice. Don't believe me? I'll prove it.
Still no sign of her. I don't think she survived the crash.
All right, let's go. Constantine wants to breach the tomb before sundown.
If I swap out the name with Hydra, Covenant, or the Enclave, would you really be able to tell? Unless you're specifically told. But enough ranting about cliches, let's continue on, shall we? So after chopping through a wall of the place that probably would qualify as a World Heritage Site, chopping through the wall reveals an Uncharted level. It is a bit odd how I think that even though I've never played an Uncharted game before. My review for the future maybe. So after climbing around the project architecture for a while, the chopper from earlier flies overhead, and I'm remembering a name. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's probably not important. Unfortunately, that chopper is owned by the bad guys, and Laura says she has to hurry up, and in doing so, destroys priceless architecture. Maybe she should be stopped on this adventure. But who cares? It's only fucking old buildings. Feel free to knock down the Eiffel Tower too. You're English, you'd like that. So after jumping to safety for like the 5th time, she makes it to her destination where her father's audio thing starts, and he starts going in more in detail about something called the Prophet, which I guess was the main thing behind all this. I don't know. Nor do I really care. To sum up what Laura's father's talking about, and trust me, you'll thank me for this, basically, the final conversation between the bad guys and this guy called Prophet basically boils down, or whatever happened there, happened at something called the Hidden Oasis, which I think I referred to as the Hidden Capital, because fuck you, they never really gave it a name. After wandering around inside for a while, she comes across an actual tomb, which is actually the entire place is a tomb, because judging by the dead bodies laying around the place. Well, I should be more precise, an actual coffin, for I'm assuming this guy called Prophet, and maybe something's important inside it, maybe. Shock and awe, the coffin's actually empty. Check the lid, maybe there's some writing inscribed to where the Holy Grail is. Yeah, and stop the Nazis. Oh, I'm sorry, Trinity I think they're called? Oh well, like it matters. Seriously, do you remember these guys? Speaking of these guys show up. I guess these guys are Trinity, that or they're armed social workers, maybe. And to show you how little developers cared about Trinity and making them actually interesting villains, if you look over to the right, you'll see BA. I wonder why. Maybe he has an evil twin brother, maybe he's a sleeper agent, or maybe, just maybe, they use the exact same model. And before you say anything, he could be a different character, I wouldn't know, but if he is, he looks so similar, what is the point? But try and take these guys seriously for a moment, they're gonna plant bombs and blow this whole place up. Yay, originality. However, the main colonel dude walks over to the coffin for some reason, and it's also where Laura's hiding. They have a bit of a standoff, and Laura asks, who are you guys? And the army guy says, you're smart, figure it out. We look like good guys? Damn, Laura's smarter than I thought. Okay, in all seriousness, I just really stopped picking on these guys. They probably get enough shit. Or, actually, then again, they probably didn't get any shit at all because no one gave a shit about them in the first place. And you need to give a shit to give a shit. And she responds with, your covenant. I mean, no, wait, your enclave. I mean, you're some generic evil organization that has more power and sense than they really should have. The guy asks where the artifact is. Laura says she doesn't know, and something happens. She steals the detonator off the guy and blows the whole place up. Jeez. We then have a running segment, and she does the same trick she did earlier to avoid the avalanche. However, in doing so, she does notice a symbol. I wonder if this is going to become relevant. Then we transition to Wayne Manor, where Laura seems to be researching something. I wonder what it is. Also, is it necessary to have all those files around when you have a laptop? You could just put it all in there. Just saying. Be easy to organize. Then Laura's friend zone nice guy BA shows up, and in this picture he does look the guy from A-Team. I'm gonna cut their conversation down because it basically boils down to your father's nuts, my father's not nuts, everyone else is nuts and wrong and stupid, and I'm gonna prove he's right. Okay, here we go, move along. After a conversation with her friend zone nice guy BA, she's then attacked by an unknown assailant, and then BA shows back up again and pities the fool. The guy, or assailant I should say, doesn't kill Laura, but he does steal her book. Okay. And then he jumps out the window saying, you'll never stop us. Oh, I highly doubt that. And then Laura shoots him a little bit, but I think she misses. And then BA says, I was totally wrong. Let's go to wherever you're saying and risk our lives on a half-cocked fury, even though we're gonna get our lives killed. Because I have a death wish as well. I wonder if they filed a police report before they left. Makes you think. Also, is it bad that I'm more curious about that than anything else going on? We then fast forward to where we were earlier in the game during the opening prologue thing, whatever the hell it was. Where we see Laura rise from the snow like a zombie from a crappy horror movie by sci-fi. I'm sorry, that was mean. But getting back to the plot, it seems that Laura, after standing for a second, gets a call from BA and she can't reach him. Although they can hear each other, or I say she can hear him, she can't talk to him directly, which is a bit weird for a radio. But she does try and tell him not to find her because of reasons. I'm not really sure why. I guess she really does have a death wish. Then she gets to go find shelter to, not die, which is always a good thing. Luckily not too far away there's an old camp, and by not too far I mean like a minute or two walk. Which granted during a blizzard after surviving an avalanche probably is pretty far. So she sets up a nice little camp for herself and starts crafting a bow and arrow. Because of fucking course, because every single fucking open world survival game that has some sort of hunting mechanics requires a fucking bow that will do more damage than a bullet, I swear to God. But I get ahead of myself. But before she crafts her bow, she overhears on the radio Trinity talking about evil such nonsense in something called the Remnant. I wonder if they're gonna be relevant and become allies or antagonists. So after exploring a little bit, we see a giant flare get launched into the air, and we overhear on the radio that they're talking to the soldiers on the ground, and they hear something go rah rah grizzly and getting torn apart. And Laura says, what the hell was that? It's a fucking grizzly bear, dumbass. She finds the dead bodies and picks up the radio and not the gun, and she looks right at the bear instead of trying to immediately run away. Luckily though, she does do that afterwards. But not after a slow camera shot of the bear coming out of its cave. You gotta milk the cinematography while you can. This leads to another running section where you outrun a bear, which is actually impossible for a human, and you make it to some trees and logs and manage to fight off the bear, which is somehow possible. And after fighting the bear off for a second, you get tossed off a cliff, and luckily it's not too far off a cliff, although the bear doesn't decide to chase you for some reason. I guess it's hurt. Poor bear. I shall name you Cheeseburger, in honor of a dear friend of mine. But enough remembering and nostalgia, let's get back to the plot, shall we? We have a pointless flashback after getting knocked out by the bear, and it boils down to, my dad was amazing, then he wasn't. Moving on. She wakes up from her vision quest and realizes she has to bind her wound from the bear attack. And in doing so, she finds that Trinity took over an old Cold War base. Okay. This base actually raises some plot questions later down the line, I have to say. But I'll get to them when I get to them. After a nice panoramic shot of the base, we see some old Mongol ruins, and she says I can get around the bear through there, or something like that. On her way back, she comes across some mushrooms that are poisonous and is gonna make a poison arrow. Aw, poor bear. Cheeseburger, don't perish so easy. But before she fights the bear, she decides to head back to camp and get some rest. Fair enough, she has been aloft for the last few hours. Unfortunately for us, while she sleeps, she has another vision about her father, and it kinda goes down basically as this. And that is, I hate you! You don't understand what I'm doing! I want you to be a father, and pretty much that for a few minutes, so I'm gonna skip it, not really mention too much about it. Happily for us and our tolerance for genericness, Laura gets waken up by a gunshot. I wonder who that could be. We get a shot of Trinity tracking down two people who have bows and arrows for weapons, and they have guns, and it goes about as well as you expect. The person with the bow manages to kill like 3 guys of guns. Wow, makes you wonder how guns supplanted bows fucking centuries ago. I'm sorry I'm harping on this too much, but it's just getting ridiculous, bows and arrows. Seriously, it's a bow and arrow. It is not as good as a gun. When will people accept that? You're not fucking Hawkeye. This isn't comic book land. But we are in video game land, though. And speaking of video game lands, why does this girl with the blonde hair look so familiar? Trinity also managed to shoot one of the people they were chasing, and they have this whole thing where they stand on top of him and put a gun to his face and then shoot him. And no one else shoots her, even though she's in perfect line of sight, and they're holding fucking rifles. Dear God, these guys are stupid. Stormtroopers are saying, man, wow. The main guy tells the other 2 guys to run her down instead of just shooting at her, and then he notices the campfire in the distance, which is Laura's. So after looking around for a second, he doesn't find anyone, and Laura is in the trees, FYI, and she's doing the predator thing. Odd from that angle, he doesn't see her. Oh well. Or maybe more accurately, the Assassin's Creed thing. Although she hasn't mastered yet because the guy's still alive when she jumps on him. She has to hit him with a rock to finish him off. But still, good job for an amateur. She decides to go back to where the bear was and try and kill it. Although she did hope it was left. Why would it leave? It's hibernating. Also, why the fuck is it awake? So she finds the bear and manages to kill it, which is sad. Poor bear. Cheeseburger, you will be missed and not forgotten. And unlike the other guy, I mean it. What did I name that random guy, by the way, was a driver? I forget. Rim or something, maybe? I think it began with an H, U, or Z. Oh, well, like it matters. Let's get back on purpose and see the poor bear. So after passing through the bear's cave, we come across a nice little plateau. We get a nice little morning view of the base where Trinity set up. And as Laura is walking by, an arrow lands right next to her feet, and she's a bit startled by this. And pulls her bow and arrow out to the ready to fight her attacker, who's that red-headed person from earlier, who looks really familiar. Wait a minute, red hair, bow and arrow, wearing kind of tribal clothes? It's Aloy! Anyway, Laura and Aloy seem to have a bit of a Mexican standoff, only with bows and arrows, which is something I don't know if ever happened before. I'm kind of glad it is, because it's kind of stupid. And they have a conversation. It boils down to Laura says, I'm not your enemy. She says, I don't believe you, and leave. And that's it. Oh, and she pulls a Batman where they do a thing where she looks away for a second, Laura, and she looks back and she's gone, magically. I wonder if she's just behind that rock. I'll stop here talking about the plot and focus mostly on my thoughts so far in the 2 hours I spent with the game. So, let's start with that, shall we? I know earlier I probably should have said to get my first impressions of the game in the first 2 hours of it, but it's gonna be in the title, so I didn't think I had to. So if you're asking why didn't I say it earlier, that's why. It's in the title, so I didn't think I had to say it. Enough said. So let's start for real now. So let's start with my 2-hour knowledge of this game, gameplay-wise, on my issues. And I do have some, so let's start, shall we? To start with, I have an issue with the sprint function. When a cutscene ends during a run section, or say we're gonna start it, and if you're holding the button down, you won't be sprinting. You have to hit the button down again, and in general, sprint buttons sometimes can get a bit iffy, where it doesn't always start the first time. But that's just my personal experience of it, and it's possible something's just wrong with my keyboard. It's possible. I don't clean this thing enough. And moving in general is a bit stiff across the board. Then again, coming to think of it, I did play the game on a keyboard. Maybe it's meant to be used as a controller. Maybe I would have had a better time with it then. But that's enough talk about moving controls, and let's start talking about the upgrade system, which I have some thoughts on. I think the upgrades are going to be one of the more pointless ones, like add 2 damage to the bow and arrow that already instant kills enemies from a really good distance away. Maybe later in the game, once you get more tougher enemies, you're going to have to start relying on it. But even then, I have a feeling that you're not going to need to get every last upgrade to beat this game. Which is fine, but does kind of make it pointless. And big question also, how many upgrades do you have to get? Do you have to min-max, or can you get like maybe only half the upgrades and you're more or less set? I got a feeling it's the second one, though, if I had to put money down. But for every negative, there must be a positive, so let's talk about them. Because if I talk about personally negative stuff, I'd be on Facebook all the time. The first thing in the map areas. Basically, you have smaller maps that interconnect and basically have transitions, which I really like. This is what I kind of thought Dead Space was going to be like, and Dead Space 2 at least wasn't that. Maybe the first one was. There's hoping for the remake. I would say other things I generally like about the game. Unfortunately, if you ask me for things I really do like about it, that was kind of it. Everything else is kind of just generic, okay things that I think other games have done better or the exact same. So yeah, that's not exactly glowing. Maybe I am becoming Twitter. And the characters aren't really that great, especially the villains. And I'm not going to talk more on that front because I beat that horse enough. And if I continue beating it, sure it may resemble life, but I don't think it's going to be good. Let's talk about Laura herself, shall we? Let's talk about her personality. And honestly, I can't think of one unique character trait she really has. She's determined and wants to prove her father wasn't nuts. That's about it. I can't think of anything else. And it's not like anyone else is much better. But one of the reasons why I gave everyone silly nicknames just so I can remember them. Seriously, I struggle to remember this guy's name was actually Jonah. I called him Mr. T just so I wouldn't forget his name. Also, Laura and Jonah are the only characters I can reliably name. No one else. No one else. I shit you not. I either forgot or they haven't said anyone else's characters' names yet. I don't even know Laura's father's name. I shit you not. And he's the driving force of the fucking plot. His name might be Joseph, but I'm not too sure on that. And I only know that because that one British lady that showed up for Laura's apartment said the word Joseph, and I just assumed that was Laura's dad. I'm not too sure. She could have been talking about someone else. I assume it was Joseph, though. I mean, for fuck's sake, the only reason why I remember Jonah's name now is because I gave him a stupid nickname where I called him Mr. T. And even now, while I was making this, I forgot his name. So yeah, that sucks. But overall, it's not horrible, it's just very generic. And if you never play this, you will not be missing much. Maybe it gets better later down the line. I wouldn't know. I only played 2 hours, and I don't think I want to go back to it. This is where I'm going to end it. I'm sorry. This isn't exactly more of a positive video. I apologize. For those who really do love this game, maybe it gets fucking wonderful later down the line. I wouldn't know. Maybe I'll try it out again one day, but I'm not too enthusiastic about it, and I don't have high hopes. Anyway, goodbye, good night, and forever. See you soon, hopefully. Maybe. Well, that's done and dusted. Now let's start working on my next video. I wonder what I should do. I know I said I'll do this, but I'm not too sure. I could do that. Bit too overdone. Oh well, I'm not gonna. I probably shouldn't leave a hook that I know I'm not gonna go through on it. Otherwise, I'd be worse at Hollywood.